Alright, today we're going to do another quick install / review video. This time it is of the UTV Giant Nerf bars, or tree kickers, rock sliders, whatever you want to call them. They fit the Polaris 1900, 900S, and Turbo. They will not fit the 800 or the older style. These Nerf bars, I got them off of eBay. A little heads up to Canadians that are ordering these, such as myself. If you order them off of the UTV Giant website, the bars themselves, I believe, are $99 American on there, and they want about $100 to ship them. If you order them off of eBay, they end up being, I think it's $159 Canadian, and it's about $40 to ship them. It ends up being under $200. So you end up saving a little bit, probably $30, and they're the exact same product. They're brand new. I don't see any disadvantage of doing it that way. If you want to order it from UTV Giant, that's fine. I just found, if I can save $30, I might as well, right? Money's hard to come by. So they came safe and sound in a box, very sparsely packaged, just a plastic bag on each one. There's the bars. They look to be unscathed. They made it here pretty good. A reminder, you get what you pay for. These aren't the Polaris bars. They're not as big. They're not as heavy. They're 1.25 inch diameter, I believe, versus I think 1 3/4 inch for the Polaris bars. I found that on the my machine's a trail that I've kind of converted to the S style bodywork. They seem a little more proportionate. The Polaris ones seem almost too big on the machine. The Polaris ones will probably take a bigger hit than these will, but we'll see. For the money, I can't complain. The Polaris ones are $440 Canadian, so more than double the price. So anyways, I'll get these out of the package, and we'll take a look and see how they line up and how they fit on the machine. Alright, so the bars are out of the package. I'm just checking out the welds and that on them. They don't look bad. Pretty good actually for the money. I mean, these aren't show quality welds, but you know what? Compared to the factory welds on the Polaris cage, I'd say they're pretty similar. If you look through here, I don't even see it through there, but where is it? Yeah, these Polaris welds, I mean, there's a lot of, there's flash, there's slag, you see the big bump on them there. These Polaris welds aren't that pretty either. They seem like they do the job and they have sufficient penetration and so on, but they're not the prettiest welds. So I would say they are very similar. They look like they've been done, I would say, with a MIG. A little goopy in spots, but you know what? For the money, I'm not going to complain. I think these are pretty solid units. The bars themselves feel solid. The front end of the bar, where it would meet at the front of the machine, has a welded plug here. And the other end here is a plastic push-in plug. And that's understandable, because when you're welding pipe, you can't have it all sealed up with welded in plugs. First of all, expansion and contraction will end up blowing the pipe apart from the heat of the weld. So you always have to leave one end open, and this plastic plug obviously served that purpose. Now, a note about these bars, and this is one of my few reservations about them. How they attach to the razor is right here, through these 3 locations, okay? These 3 locations on your machine are these 3 little Torx bolts that hold the plastic on. It's not the big frame bolts here. These do go into the frame, but they don't go right through. They just go through one layer. So is that going to be a weak spot on here? Probably. I know the Super ATV ones, they go through the frame. You drill a hole right through, and it's bolts and or studs and a nut. Probably a little stronger. A lot of people have reservations about drilling through their frame. I don't really. This is just the outer frame. The actual frame of the machine is in and under more. This is just like an exoskeleton, but it's still important. You still don't want to go weakening it. If you did want to do that, like the Super ATV ones, what you would do is here, I would drill a hole, and you could either put a bolt and a nut through there, or you could weld a stud on there, or you know, get a stud coming off there and fasten them through the frame, such as the Super ATVs do. I'm going to try them attaching them the way that they recommend from the factory here at Super ATV. It says it'll hold up to 300 pounds. So we'll see. Now if you're going to go bouncing off the side of a tree and using it really rough, then you may want the heavier bars anyways. These are strictly bush bars for me. If I'm in a tight location and I do scrub up against a tree, it's going to be going very slow, and it's more just to kick the back end of the machine out so I don't wipe out my flares and my tire. That's all it's for. I would not recommend these for rock climbing and banging the bottom on the rocks. I think you would pretty quickly rip these out. But for a general Nerf bar, for trail riding, to keep you away from some stumps or some trees at slow speeds, I think they'll be more than sufficient. And for the price, like I say, I don't see a problem. So what I'm going to do now, a little side note, they don't come with any instructions, nothing. But, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You got 3 holes and they line up with 3 bolts, so it's not rocket science trying to figure out how to do these. So I'm going to get my Torx. I think it's a T40. I'm going to take out these 3 bolts right now. 1, 2, 3, and we'll see how this bolts on. I'll be back in 2 seconds here. Alright, so the driver's side, I have done a mock-up. With it, there's the bolts put in. They're not tight yet. They're just snug, if that. But I've already ran into a couple problems. So here's the first problem. There's the bolt that needs to go in. That's not going to work. There's no way to fit the ratchet in there. Bear with me, this is hard to do with one hand. Even the socket doesn't even fit in there on its own. And these are Torx, these aren't Allen keys. You can't use an Allen key. Actually, the socket does fit in just. So, that's a definite problem. The second problem that I see, remember how I was just saying how we're not going to be bouncing these off big rocks and so on. They're not designed for that. There's the bolts that hold them in. I don't know if you can tell. They're tiny. I mean, that is a small bolt. It's probably the equivalent. It's metric, obviously, so there's no equivalent, but it's roughly the size of, I would say, here's a 1/4 inch bolt. I would say it's a hair smaller than a 1/4 inch bolt. A tiny 1/4 inch bolt. So, I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be enough to hold them on, to be honest with you. I'm sure they won't fall off, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I don't think it's going to take much of a knock to pop them off. So what I'm thinking is, I checked, and in behind each one of the big holes in the frame that I showed everybody, I'll show you on the passenger side. In behind each one of these, there is clearance. There's nothing in the way. Okay, on this one, on the other side, on the driver's side, you have to be careful because your voltage regulator is there, but you won't hit it. What I'm thinking is drilling a a through here, the 3/8 each hole with a 3/8 inch drill. I'll get a couple grade 8, obviously longer than that. Some grade 8 3/8 bolts. I will, that might be too long. I'll drill a hole through here. If I flip this over, okay, there you can see it's a channel. This isn't tube. Okay, on the bottom. So if I drill a hole through here, slide this bolt through, right? So you end up with you're going to end up with something along the lines of that coming out, welded on the inside. All you'll have is this part sticking through. Slide it through the frame, put a nut on the end of it. At least then it's being held by the frame. It's not being held by these little tiny screws. I mean, they're small. They're the same ones that hold your flares on, which, you know, weigh like a pound and are made out of plastic. If these things are going to be holding a, you know, 1,200 pound machine moving off the trees, I really have my doubts if those bolts are going to last. Anybody else can feel free to chime in and let me know their feedback on that, whether they do indeed hold or whether I'm on the right track. I'm not sure. Now, what I was saying to everybody about the frame, about drilling through the frame, here I am under the driver's side wheel well. There is what I'm talking about drilling through. That's the exoskeleton, basically. Your actual frame of your machine is here. Now, don't send a bunch of hate mail. I realize this is all part and parcel of the frame. I get it. But the part that takes the power between the wheels and the engine and the drivetrain and everything is that part of the frame. This part of the frame is, in a nutshell, to attach your body to. That's what it's for. So it's already got a hole drilled on the outside. If you don't go crazy and drill an oversized hole on the inside, I think you'll be fine. It's what the Super ATV bars require. So it can't be that drastic of a thing to do. So I think that's what I'm going to try to do. That'll solve my problem of not being able to get that bolt in the front. I guess I'll still have to figure out a way to plug that hole, but we'll figure that out later. But I'll feel a lot better that these things are on a little more secure. So I'll set up, I'll do some research. I'll set up my equipment to drill those holes, and I'll guide you through that step by step, because I'm just really not happy with that little bolt holding it on. I think I would rather a 3/8 bolt coming through there. All right, I'll be back. All right, so here I have the passenger side Nerf bar. I have drilled out 3/8 holes in each of the tabs, and these correspond with the holes in the frame of the vehicle. And what the plan is to weld bolts. So in other words, okay, there's a 3/8 bolt. Basically, I'm going to weld that from the back side here, so you won't see it. Weld that there, same as this one. Okay, weld it. And the third one, well, this one's a little tighter because of the angle. There we go. Weld that there. Okay, and then these bolts will go through the machine, and there'll be a nut and washer on the back side. What I also had to do is I drilled through holes down here. Just a 3/8 hole through, okay? What I'm going to do now, before I weld these bolts on, I'm just going to do a test fit. I'm going to deburr these holes. I have a little deburring tool here that goes on your drill, and it just makes a nice chamfer and deburrs those holes so nobody's getting sliced open. The back side, I can use a little file. I'm going to put the bolts on. I'm not going to weld them. Okay, I'm just going to put them in, put them on the machine, make sure I can get a nut on the back and everything lines up. If it does, then I'll take it off and weld it. I don't want to weld one of these bolts now and realize that this bolt is off location by a 1/4 inch or something. It's easier for me to move it and weld it after I know it's wrong than to do it twice. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'll mock it up. I'll shoot a short video once it's mocked up and let you know where I stand. So far in real time, this has taken me probably a half an hour, and probably 15 minutes of that was finding the right bolts and drill bits and so on. So side note, I always try to use a good quality grade 8 or higher bolt. These are not the nuts that I'm going to be using. These are just stainless nuts for now. They're great for not rusting, but stainless isn't the strongest material. I'm going to want a grade 8 bolt with some Loctite on it, or at the very least grade 8 nut with some Loctite, or a nylock nut. You don't want these things vibrating loose after the fact. Also, because the tubing is round on the frame, I may get some spacers made up that have like a curve to them, so they match the frame, if that makes any sense. I don't want to over tighten these bolts and have it try to collapse the round tubing on the machine. So we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. I haven't figured out what I'm doing with that yet. Okay, I'll mock this up and I'll be back. So the passenger side is done now. I changed my plans slightly. I still bolted them through the frame like I said I was going to. The only thing I didn't do is I didn't weld the bolts to the Nerf bars, because if you don't have them welded perfectly straight and in perfect alignment, you're not going to get them through the holes. So when I was doing my mock-up, I just bolted them through. I don't know if you can see the bolt there. Let me get a light here and I'll show you better. Okay, So there you can see, there's the bolt through the frame, sorry, through the tree kicker. And then it comes through the frame, right there where the light's shining. So you can see, very non-obtrusive. I did the same on the other two spots. I won't bother crawling under and showing you. I have to take my word for it. One there and one there. The only drawback is, in order to stop this bolt from spinning, because it's such a tight spot in there, you can't fit a wrench or a socket on there. It might fit a thin wall socket, but anyways, I just jammed a screwdriver in between the bolt and the tree kicker itself, and it'll stop the bolt from spinning. And just make sure you use a lock nut on the back, okay? I used lock nuts. I don't trust lock washers. I used an actual lock nut. And there's the metal lock nuts I used. I don't use nylock, I use the metal. You can tell they're a lock nut because the top of the bolt is kind of rounded here, and also the hole is oblong a little bit, and that's what makes it lock. So anyways, that's what I did. I'm going to finish doing this side now. It's going to be identical to the other. I'll give a further review on how these tree kickers held up once I get out on some riding. But like I say, for the money, and from UTV Giant, I have their Nerf bars now. I have their lower doors. I have their windshield. So far, I've been happy with everything. I'll do further updates come spring once I get out on the trails. All right, thanks for watching, folks. See ya.